Welcome to the Conquer Your Battlefield podcast, where we come together to discuss some of the more significant struggles and metaphorical battlefields that we've faced along our journeys and share some insight on how we've conquered them. I'm JD McGibney, and today I'll be chatting with one of the most humble human beings I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. A man that manages to combine the pure essence of heavy metal with the fine elegance of gothic romanticism. A phenomenal singer, songwriter, pianist, and the mastermind behind the symphonic metal band Anthea, Mr. Diego Valadez. How you doing today, Diego?
Good, man. Just chilling, enjoying the AC. We were talking earlier before we recorded. Had some issues with that earlier. So,
Oh, man.
yeah, I'm doing great.
Well, I'm glad that the AC is finally working because this Southern California summer sun is no joke.
It was a little brutal, man. But we got it working, and things are great, and not brain fight anymore. So it was perfect.
Good, especially since us metalheads like to wear all black. You know, we're basically heat magnets.
That doesn't help, and having the long hair. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no.
I do this to myself.
That's right. At least you don't have the beard on top of it.
Fair enough. Yeah, you got me there.
Well, today we are going to be talking about music as a coping mechanism. According to the American Psychological Association, coping mechanisms are any conscious or non-conscious adjustment or adaptation that decreases tension and anxiety in a stressful experience or situation. According to the National Library of Medicine, there are 4 main categories of coping mechanisms. 1 is problem-focused, which directly addresses the problem causing the distress. 2, emotion-focused, which aims to reduce the negative emotions associated with the problem. 3, meaning-focused, in which an individual uses cognitive strategies to derive and manage the meaning of the situation. And then 4 is social coping, or support-seeking, in which an individual reduces stress by seeking emotional or instrumental support from their community. In today's environment, in particular Western culture, it is quite common to hear that people tend to use music in relation to one of these categories of coping mechanisms in order to work through their particular obstacle or obstacles. Diego, we've talked privately prior to this interview, and you had mentioned that when you were writing the Anthea album Illusion, that it ended up becoming a vessel for you to open up about things that you've previously found difficult to open up about. What was it about the writing process, or about music in general, that broke down that barrier for you to finally start opening up about what you had until that point felt uncomfortable sharing?
Yeah. So basically, Illusion, throughout the entire album, like a lot of songs are basically a lot of personal stories, and I do use a lot of metaphors and kind of vague language to kind of also, allow the listener to interpret their own version of it and kind of connect. But yeah, especially with the title song in particular, when I was writing that, I was kind of going through some stuff at the time, and usually when I play music in general, when I'm just like jamming on my own, I just use it to kind of get my emotions out, kind of like feel it out, and it's not always super negative or anything like that. Sometimes I'll end up playing I'm in a good mood, I'm playing a happy little jig or something, or I'll just play something for like hours and hours, and I'll start off maybe with some like melancholy like piano, and by the end of it, I'm playing some ragtime or something. But so yeah, when it came time to make Illusion, something I noticed about myself, just in general, was that I guess the best way to word it was that I was kind of basically going through depression. I had a lot of struggles, a lot of demons I was trying to battle, but I was kind of going through it alone and like completely internally. And I was kind of showing, like, expressing myself in as a contrast, expressing myself in a super positive way. I would always try to be like, making jokes, making everyone laugh, and being like just super happy-go-lucky kind of person. And I think that was kind of my defense mechanism. And I think part of it too was that I was kind of starting to feel pretty miserable then, and just from like some stuff in the past. But like, yeah, because of that, like I didn't subconsciously, I feel like I didn't want other people to be experiencing that kind of, sorrow and stuff like that. So when it came time to make the Illusion, what that whole song is essentially about is exactly that. And it's like the opening line is gallery of warped memories in my nebula, and I'm talking about like all my past experiences and stuff like that, and like how some of them are kind of distorted and like new interpretations at this point. And it's a conflict in my forgiving heart. Like I always try to be this a very like positive person, but I was starting to feel like a lot of that stuff from back then was kind of starting to bubble up and make me feel a little alienated from the world.
Yeah.
And sorry, what?
No, no, continue. I was gonna say I totally relate to everything you're saying so far. Like,
Yeah.
I have felt all of that.
Exactly. So yeah, that is the illusion in the song "Illusion" is that I'm like presenting myself as this like super positive person while dealing with the stuff internally. Um, and part of what really helped me out about that is that like releasing that song and it became this super public thing. It became the single like from an album. Was that now it was out there. Now I can hide behind this illusion because the song is out there. People have heard it now. And so, yeah, I can't keep up that facade anymore. And that's what's really helped me. And realizing that as well. And I was realizing it as we were recording it. And I was still simultaneously writing the rest of the album. And it just made me realize that I could really use music as like this sort of vessel to really express myself emotionally and really put myself out there. And that I was kind of tired of hiding of like what I was really like dealing with. So
Well, it takes a lot of emotional energy in general to feel any kind of emotion intensely, but then it takes even more energy to hide one thing and then portray another one, but like things that are completely opposite. So the fact that that was like your standard. I'm not sure how long you were going through this, but I'm assuming weeks, months, potentially years. Like that's very draining. So like I can imagine that sense of relief as you released. It's like a pressure release where you're like, oh, I'm not hiding. I'm letting this go. Um, Immediately after it was done, once like it clicked in your head what you were doing and you made it public, how did you feel once it was kind of out there?
Once it was released to me,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was kind of interesting because I was seeing like some comments and some reviews and stuff, and there are people and like they've talked to me personally and stuff, and there are a lot of people that are just like, that's a cool metal song, that's awesome, and like it fucking rocks, bro. And I'm like, that's awesome. If that's what you got from it, that's cool. Like, I'm glad you're enjoying it that way. Like, get in the pit, headbang, that's awesome. And then there's other people who like message me directly and be like, hey, like I really connected with this. This really like meant something to me. And so like those kind of comments have been like really great too. And I feel like yes, it was really hard for me to put all this out there, but I felt like in a way it was important. Especially once I started seeing people like coming to me and telling me like how much it helped them out, like different songs and like different lyrics and stuff. I think it helps people realize that they're not alone, and
100%,
in a
man.
way, and it also helped me realize that I'm not alone. That I'm
Dude,
putting these songs out there, and people are coming to me with their struggles and stuff like that.
that realization and that kind of interaction, like as a musician and like putting your heart and soul into something that you're creating, or any kind of artist, if you're a painter, sculptor, whatnot, if you put your heart and soul into something and then you have an audience member, however they're consuming the art, reach out to you and literally explain, tell you like this is something that they personally resonate with, like that's a connection that you can't replicate. Anyone that is a musician, anyone that is some sort of artist, that has created something and put themselves out there will completely understand. Like, you can't really put that feeling into words. And in the fact that, like, that is a vessel that we as, human beings have with one another to, like, take our emotions, which are very illogical things, and put them into some sort of logical context by giving them, like, a physical form. Like,
Right.
For lack of better words, it works magic to connect us. And, I think it's very important, especially regards to mental health, and like to find a way that best works for you as an individual to convey those messages. Because one of the biggest things that I'm sure you realized in your own experience is that, like with depression in particular, that feeling of isolation can be extremely dangerous because you feel, oh, I don't, I'm alone. No one's going to understand me. Or you might even feel like, oh, I don't want to be a burden to somebody. Or like, especially in the United States, in Western culture, it's often viewed as, a negative thing if you, talk to somebody because you don't want to come off as like, oh, I'm complaining. But in reality, it's like we're all human beings. We all have ups and we all have downs. There's nothing wrong with having those down, moments, as long as we are all doing the proper things and respecting one another, you know,
Right.
it's totally fine. It's like if you need to talk, you should be able to talk. And, you know, I, I'm sure you as an individual have like been there for a friend or a family member who's like needed to talk. You're like, yeah, sure. Your door's always open, and,
Of course.
I'm sure at this point in your life, you've established that, with friends and family, you can go to them and they're like, yeah, man, door's always open. Talk to me. What's going on? And like, there is no actual sense of being a burden to one another.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that 100%. And yeah, that is definitely an issue with Western culture in general. But I do think things are turning with that. Things are getting better, and I think people are starting to talk more openly about mental health. And yeah, and that's why I really appreciate like this podcast that you're doing, man. Just
Oh,
really putting it out there. And
well, well, thank you, sir. And thank you again for, being here and opening up and sharing.
yeah, of course, of course. Um, but yeah, and I do think like back to the whole art thing, like it really is like such a useful tool. And like I know like I'm putting it like out in the public and like really making my like really putting myself like out there. But I'm not saying like everyone needs to do that, and that's not exactly the easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah, no,
But I mean, I think
100%. Like, and it takes, the to quote my grandma, it takes a lot of chutzpah to like do something like that.
she sounds very wise.
Mm. Oh man, my grandmother is literally like the stereotypical Jewish like grandma from like New York, complete with the accent and everything.
Great. Oh man. But yeah, no, I think it's very useful to have an outlet. Like um, we had talked earlier, like yeah, whether that be like poetry or painting, or like it could even be like carpentry or whatever it happens to be, like sculpting, like just it helps to have some sort of vessel. And also, of course, like yeah, I do I like agree that yeah, we need each other to talk to each other, to talk to one another about our issues. But sometimes the abstract is really helpful as well. That's why I really love like, music is my coping mechanism.
I agree, and I like the idea of like abstract things, because just talking from like personal experience, I write a lot of instrumental music. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm writing, it's like I'll focus on the emotional context. How do I feel in the moment? And I'll write something. But instrumental music is extremely abstract because like there's literally like
Sure.
it's just notes thrown together. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like if I write something, my thoughts and feelings are going to be completely different in the moment of writing than say when I come back a week later and listen to a recording, or if I play it again. It's like, oh, what are my thoughts now? How am I? Uh, how do I feel about this? What are my feelings towards the stimuli that made me want to write this? So I think music or art in general, it's really cool because it's like um, you're taking that snapshot in time of your emotions, and you're never really going to have like a true representation of that again, other than like, here's the thing. And then like every time you perform that song, it's going to be completely different. Every time you go
Yeah.
back and listen to that song, your interpretation is going to be completely different. But it gives you the ability to look at it with different perspectives, and allows you to grow and analyze. And then eventually, if it is something that you used as a coping mechanism for dealing with something that was difficult, it helps you uh, give you like a pedestal to stand on to like get past it and grow, and not let it uh, you know have power over you.
Right. Yeah. No. 100%. And it's kind of funny you mentioned about like writing instrumental music, because that's kind of my writing process is a little. I guess it's kind of similar. Where so I write the music and lyrics for most of the Anthea stuff, and first I write the music itself, and I go strictly just off of emotion. What am I feeling, kind of thing. And I just kind of I usually just jam, and it turns into eventually becomes a song, and it's just pure like raw emotion. And I don't usually even know what the song's going to be about. Like I'm just writing music at that time, and then after like I have like a song like demoed out basically, then I can go back and think of like, okay, well, what is this like? What was subconsciously going through my head, kind of thing, and then what can I turn like may actually make this song about? And then I go back and actually write the lyrics and kind of express myself through poetry in that way.
And it's interesting too. I like going through that, that process, because at that point, it's like whatever's going to come out is going to come out. And like, let's say you have something that's like either subconsciously bothering you or something you're like, I don't really want to like address this yet. You can look at the thing and be like, what was really bothering me? And then you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was bothering me as much as I thought it was. And then you now have the freedom, because it's not in the back of your mind gunking up your thought process. It's got a physical form. It's in front of you. You now can look at it, quote unquote, or like see it, feel it. You can interact with it somehow, and you're like, oh, how do I process this? And it's such a phenomenal thing with human ability to make art. And in particular in this case with music. Question for you.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that the writing cycle for Illusion in particular is kind of like the spark that like started your journey to kind of like opening up. Did you in the past, before Anthea, ever have any moments or experiences where music ended up being a coping mechanism for you?
Yes, but in private.
How,
So
and
like I was before like I played I had like several bands in the past, and it was I had a lot of like shreddy like power metal kind of stuff, and it was a ton of fun. And I love that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was never like super getting deep into like my emotions or thoughts and anything like that. It was just like fun. Let's talk about dragons kind of stuff.
I mean, dragons are awesome no matter what context
yeah,
you're talking about.
Exactly. But yeah, no, in private I would and yeah, I still do this today. Like ever since I started like playing music, I would just like jam on piano and just kind of go with the flow and see where things go. And it really helps to just jam. And as I was saying earlier, like it could start off as like this like super depressive kind of like little melody that I'm doing, and then eventually turn into like this super happy whatever happens to be like little dance jig or whatever.
Yeah, because like you were saying when you first started like explaining stuff, is like you would you play music like just to like basically vent any kind of emotion, which I think again is like it's really healthy, because as human beings we are a whirlwind of emotions, positive and negative. And whether it's an extreme amount of positive energy or negative energy, sometimes you just need a release, because it's not socially acceptable to just be like running around in circles in like your office place. Sometimes you got to be like, let me just go play an hour and a half of like this intense like epic power metal, or let me just go and write like this really dissonant fucking like prog death album just for fun.
Nothing
just
wrong with that. Great stuff.
And then you have that emotional release, you have that that venting, and then you're able to like think a little bit more logically and interact with the world around you and enjoy your surroundings.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I think this is the first time I've gotten like really like personal, emotionally wise. But I also like want to like say that it's not all focusing on like the negative emotions. Like that's 100% correct. So like yeah, Illusion was definitely about my depression. But then on that same album, we have a song called Moirai, and that one is all about how beautiful I think it is. Like all human, like all of our stories, past, present, and future, are all interconnected. And that's what that song is about, basically, just like the interconnection of humanity itself.
That's a beautiful concept right there. It's the fact that like we're all working in harmony in some way or another.
Exactly. Like people that we have never and will never meet, but we are like our stories are all connected.
Oh,
And
100%, I agree with that.
yeah.
And I
And what
I
was
like the idea that uh like on one album you have such drastic uh you know such drastically different like messages in the songs, and it kind of captures you know the differences of one individual in general. So it's just like, we're all different, we're all unique, but even
right?
within one person, we have, constant fluctuations of our emotions up and down. And the idea that, you're using music to capture all of that, I think that's a beautiful thing. And the fact that you said that you've been able to actually physically like connect with people and talk with people about those emotions and like have that kind of like understanding with one another is even more wonderful.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And people have been like really like people have been really kind about it. It means a lot to me when people like really understand what the songs are about, and like they message me like directly and like let me know about like how it's helping out. And I know it's a great feeling knowing that I feel like in some way like I'm like, helping to make a difference in some way. And and yeah, actually after like releasing that album, I got contacted by this community called Metalhead,
Oh
which
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know if we can add a link to that or something. Yeah, and they totally understood what it was, what Illusion the album as a whole was, and so they asked me to be basically be a part of the community, and what they are is like a mental health advocacy group for the rock and metal community, and yeah, I'm just gonna shamelessly plug them right now because they are
Please,
a big
please
source
tell
of
us
yeah
more about
yeah
Metalhead. I want to
yeah.
hear
So
more
it's
about it.
sure, yes, metalhead.com, and yeah, so basically they have a bunch of different like stories from different musicians. So I have mine. You can find Timo Toki's on there, Sean from Camelot, and a bunch of different musicians who we all love to listen to the music and whatnot. But then it's nice to hear their stories and get a little deeper as to like what they do in terms of and what they believe in terms of mental health. And so it has a lot of like people's stories there, and not only that, it has resources. So you can basically it connects you to like different websites where you can maybe help find a therapist or just like different
Wonderful.
things that can just kind of help you out. And yeah, it's a great resource. So.
It sounds like a really like wonderful resource, and I do like the fact that it's focuses on like the heavy metal and hard rock subculture, because obviously this because you are in the subculture, but despite having that feeling or belief of brotherhood and unity, there is still you know a very strong like masculine uh tradition of like, oh, you have to be tough, you have to be strong. We have literally an entire subgenre of metal called Viking metal, and I feel like that whole thing is kind of like self-explanatory. But really, when you
Sure, sure.
break it down and like talk to the people who like play stuff, like the guys in Amon Amarth, like they're all like super happy and like wonderful, and like they will actually be super kind to like, oh, what do you need? How can I help you? Kind of thing. But
Right.
I think for me, I think a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the underlying messages of those kind of songs, like that kind of music, of like the idea of strength and like power and like overcoming like your enemies, I think that's more of like metaphorical. I think that can be applied to anything. It's not just I have to be tough and I have to be a man. I have to be strong. I have to be a Viking. It's
Right.
like I have to be confident in myself and my abilities, and I have to face any obstacle, whether it is outside or inside,
Right.
with however it needs to be faced. So like
Right.
anyone with a who struggles with their mental health, me as an example, I have dealt with anxiety my entire life. It took me a really long time to go, oh, this is a thing that I struggle with, and I had to admit, okay, I have a problem. And for anybody, it's not necessarily easy to go, oh, there is something that isn't working properly, or I might have a fault. And having
Right.
faults aren't negative. Everybody has faults, but part of those
Right.
things is that like it helps make us unique because it's how we respond to those faults, those imperfections that helps make us unique and wonderful.
Yeah, no, that's totally 100% true. As you're saying about like Viking metal in particular, but like or any other genre, but like as you're saying, with Viking metal, it's all about like conquering your enemies and whatnot. But it could also be interpreted as conquering your own internal struggles, and that's what's great about music and art in general. It's all up to your own interpretation, and you know, somebody could like you could write a song that's literally just about like a fairy tale or something, but to someone that means something else entirely, and they can relate to their own life some way. And yeah, you never know. Like something that you just thought was like a fun little tune ends up like really helping someone out. So that's what I love about like music and putting things out there in general.
Dude, metaphors are extremely powerful. You know, or like you have like a Viking metal song where you're out, you know, braving the storm. You're on this boat with like, you know, your closest peers, blah blah blah. And it's really just like, oh, I struggle from depression and I'm braving the storm of depression and I have those that I love and appreciate surrounding me to help me through this tough time. Power of metaphor, and it's very theatrical, which is also, you know, a very big heavy metal trope is to just, you know, go big or go home, as they say.
Right. And yeah, we also have a song, you know, kind of in that same kind of spirit on that same album, Illusion, The Expedition is the song. So basically, that song, it's on a surface level, it's basically someone sailing and going to explore new lands and conquering. You know, there's a storm at sea, but they're going to go find new land, kind of thing. And but like, I think it's pretty clear what it really is about. It is what we're doing. This is our first album, and we're like really venturing into this new territory with this new band, this new project, and really putting ourselves out there. And so we're conquering not an actual storm, but like a metaphorical storm of all of our different, you know, struggles, and kind of combine and just working together and persevering and finding this new path for the band in general.
And doing it in a very theatrical way. So, bravo.
Exactly. Well, thanks.
You're welcome. A question for you. It sounds like this whole like revelation and this feeling of opening up and using music as a coping mechanism is a somewhat relatively new thing for you, especially in such a public eye.
Right.
Have you ever gone to with the aid of, you know, music as a coping mechanism? Have you ever gone to see an actual like professional mental health professional?
Yes, yeah, I have. I've used BetterHelp in the past.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, which I highly recommend, by the way. But yeah, and that's definitely that is something they have brought up, and basically, yeah, what my therapist at the time was telling me was like, I have this resource, and I should try to use it in this kind of in this way that really does help me like emotionally and mentally. And this was it was actually my own kind of idea was like, well, it is going to be very public, but at the same time, like, you know what, that's what I was worried about at first, but I decided that yes, it's going to be very public, but in a way that's going to help other people as well, if you know, like maybe they're going through something similar. So I'm glad I took her advice on that. And yeah, I for
Well,
those who haven't seen,
did you?
I
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Did you start, just so I have like a timeline, did you start going to see this therapist through BetterHelp roughly around the same time that you were writing Illusion?
It was right around literally the exact same time.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So I had just started writing some songs. So yeah, there are a couple songs on the album that were before, and then the rest of the album is after or during.
Interesting.
So I could actually see like sorry?
So I was gonna say, so it is like, you know, Illusion, like the album itself really kind of like is a snapshot for you emotionally. It's like a really important, like pivotal moment in your life where it's like, you know, you were dealing with this, you know, in one way for such a long time, and it kind of sounded like it was getting to be like a little overwhelming for you, and then like you got to this like crossroads, and you had this tool with like a therapist, and she kind of helped you kind of like hone this tool that you had, and illusion is the final product that kind of like birthed this new avenue that you've decided to go down in life.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, she has a huge, she plays a huge part as to like why Anthea has become what it is now.
Well, brava to your therapist.
Thank you. To her.
Yeah, no, I very much commend you on your efforts to make music specifically to help yourself alleviate that stress and that burden that you were facing, and then also with the intention of kind of like helping other people like connect. I think that the stigma around talking about our feelings, the stigma around talking about our mental health in general, is unfounded, because it's just like we end up talking to our friends and family anyway, but it just seems like in the public eye, it's still deemed to be like, oh, we don't really talk about that. But it's like, why don't we talk about that? So many fucking people deal with a lot of, mental health issues. We talk about like, oh, I got like dry skin. All right. Well, go to the doctor, get some lotion, get some medication. It's like, oh no, I got a cold. You talk about that. It's like, oh no, someone's got COVID. You talk about that. Why don't we talk about like if we're dealing with depression, how our body is functioning in any way is important. We need to, either get consultation from a professional, a medical professional, or just be like, hey, I know you've dealt with this before. What do you recommend? It's there. So I think that the whole, us having these conversations, whether it's through music or whether it's having a conversation like this on a podcast for like the public to listen to and watch, or if we just have it in private with like our friends and family, I think doing that more often is going to, show that this stigma that has been placed upon us for, centuries at this point, it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly with that. And yeah, like, for sure, like releasing that album has made me more comfortable with talking about things in such a public forum, like, because now it's like so out there. But yeah, I think that's really important for us, like just in general as people. Yeah, like we're all going through our own struggles. Everybody has their own personal battles. And so I agree 100% with what you're saying. Like, yeah, we do need to communicate that, and I think because depression and other like mental health issues, like it can feel very isolating, and you feel like you're the only one going through these things, but it's so not true. Like, so I think the more that we talk about it, the more that we acknowledge what's going on and how we feel, like the more other people are starting to notice that they're not alone. And I do think that is shifting slowly. I wish it would be faster, but I mean, it is shifting.
Yeah, it is definitely shifting, because I remember from like when I was a little kid, and like growing up in like my home environment, it's like you didn't really like talk about like your negative feelings. If anything, it's just like when things got too much, you just yelled or screamed, and it's like I feel like that things could be a little bit more conducive to like positive outcomes instead of just like not talking about it and then blowing up. And then like for anyone that has listened into the show before or watched the show before, like knows that like I've given a whole bunch of statistics on like the amount of people who are affected by any given thing, whether it's anxiety, depression, borderline personality disorder, any kind of like combination of things, and things like anxiety manifests in a whole bunch of different things. You can have generalized anxiety disorder, you can have OCD, there's different there's different things too, and like so many people are affected by something in different degrees, and it's just like, all right, how do I acknowledge that this is a thing so I can not let it affect my decision making? And it's I very much again commend you for being part of such a positive conversation.
Oh, I mean, thank you so much for letting me be a part of it in this podcast form. So.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for using your art to be, a vessel for that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's been very helpful for me personally, and I'm glad it's been helpful for other people as well. And yeah, I highly recommend for anyone to really do their own art. Like if you like painting, if you like poetry, whatever it is, like you don't have to make it necessarily the most public thing in the world, but I mean, just try to express yourself in that way, and I think you'll see that it definitely helps.
Yeah,
Just really putting yourself on paper and on ink, whatever it is for you.
man, I wholeheartedly agree. This is a personal belief. This is not backed by any medical research, as far as I know. I've not done the
Sure.
research, but my personal belief is that everybody needs some sort of artistic outlet, whether it's music, whether it's sculpting, whether it's cooking. My brother swears up and down that he doesn't like art. He's not an artist, blah blah blah. But as from personal experience, the man is a maestro when it comes to cooking. The man just like
Okay.
looks and like magic happens, and like that is his artistic outlet. So like
Okay.
anything that involves someone being creative in any concept, I think is just a healthy. It's a
100%.
healthy thing that helps regulate our emotions.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah, like I was saying, it doesn't necessarily have to be music. Yeah, cooking is a perfect example. That requires creativity for sure.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
delicious.
and it's delicious. And if you're very angry, you can make it very spicy.
All right, I think I need to get some Mexican food and just line it up with hot sauce.
There you go. Man, I really upset you. Okay.
no, no, you just gave me an idea that I just wanted like some really like spicy food for dinner now.
Fair enough.
Well, Diego, thank you so much for taking the time to open up and share some of like what you've been through and some of what it was like for you to like basically come to terms in a public forum with what you were dealing with.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you for having me on and for doing this whole show in general. And not just for having me, but for having like all the musicians and all the people that you had in general. Like I think it's a really positive thing that you're doing here, and I commend you for that.
Well, thank you, sir. I truly believe that the more that we as a society feel comfortable opening up about our struggles, that the more it will help others to realize that they truly are not alone. Everyone has the inner strength to face whatever life puts along their path. So thank you again for taking the time to chat, and thank you to everyone that has tuned into this episode. If anyone watching or listening finds that they are struggling with their mental health, please do not be afraid to reach out to your friends, family, or a mental health professional. I'll place a link in the description of this video that will have some information and connection to further resources. And until next time, remember, you always have the strength to conquer your battlefield.